Good evening. Welcome to the first Community Engagement Forum. On behalf of the faculty and staff at Robert E. Lee High School, I would like to welcome you all. I would like to begin with a personal welcome, our state superintendent, State Department of Education staff members. Let's give them a huge round of applause. I would also like to welcome our local superintendent, Ms. Allen, local board members, and local central office staff. And lastly, but certainly not least, I would like to welcome you, the parents, the community activists, the stakeholders of this community, of this great community. Welcome you all. If there's anything that we can do to make your stay more comfortable, please do not hesitate to ask. And without further ado, I would like to welcome the Director of Communications for the State Department of Education, Dr. Michael Sibley.
Good evening. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. We greatly appreciate your presence. We know it's a Monday evening. You could be anywhere, but you chose to be here and talk about the things that are important with public education in Montgomery. So your presence says a lot. It speaks volumes, and we thank you so much for being here this evening. The way this is going to roll out this afternoon, we'll have a relatively brief presentation by State Department of Education officials. And while we are here to roll out some of the details about the intervention between the State Department of Education and Montgomery Public Schools, just as much, if not more so, we're here to hear from you guys. We know that there are concerns in the community about what's happening in your schools. We know that people care deeply about what's happening with their children, with their jobs, with their future. Understandable concerns, and we want you to ask all the questions that come to mind, and if at all possible, we will answer them. We are trying to be as transparent as possible. Again, this is the first of three. It will be at Lanier High School next Tuesday and at Park Crossing next Thursday. So as the presentation goes along, if you have questions, please keep your questions in mind. And the microphones at both ends of the auditorium are where you'll step up to once we complete the presentation part of this and we go into the question and answer phase, which would be the majority of the time that we spend here today. We also had this service, we have this service available online streaming. I think it worked pretty effectively. I think the folks who are not here are watching online. So again, we're grateful for that. I have a couple of housekeeping details that I wanted to outline before we got started, just to make sure we have a very smooth transition this evening. First of all, we will answer all the questions that we can. If there's a question that we cannot answer, we will try to get that answer to you, but do understand that this is the very beginning of a pretty involved process. So there are some things that are still gray right now. Well, we're working diligently to answer as many details as we can. Time is of the essence. You know, we have from 6:30 to 8:30 here, but doesn't have to last till 8:30. You feel free to ask any question that you're curious about, but if someone in front of you already asked the question that you had, for the sake of time, we're going to try not to duplicate very much. Also, please try not to mention any individual person by name with your question. Please don't mention a student by name for personal identification purposes. Please try to refrain from mentioning a teacher or any personnel by name. Please limit your comments and your questions to matters of the intervention. We're here to speak specifically about the intervention between the State Department and the Department of Education, so we'll be grateful if you would do that. Of course, be respectful. We believe that everyone here will do that. That's not very much of a concern, but I did want to make that point that we're asking everyone to be respectful of the time that you have at the microphone. We ask that everyone comply if asked to stop for any particular reason. And also, there may be questions that you think about when you leave here. If you get in your car or you get home this evening, you think, well, I wish I would have thought about that. There's an email address to the communications department at the State Department that's going to come up at the end of this. If you don't stay till the end, and I hope everyone will, but it is simply comm, C-O-M-M, at ALSDE.edu. It will be up on the screen at the end of the presentation that you can email in your questions if you have some that come to you you don't think about during the course of this presentation. We have a sign language interpreter for anyone who might need those services. And I want to introduce to you Ms. Cotton, who's coming to be an interpreter for our Spanish-speaking population. If there's anyone who needs the services, please contact her and she'll translate that for you. And I'm going to have her come up and introduce herself and say a word or two.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Maite Cotton. Después de la presentación del Departamento de Educación del Estado de Alabama, habrá tiempo para preguntas y respuestas. Si usted necesita ayuda, voy a estar al lado derecho del auditorio. Al lado derecho, mi nombre es Maite Cotton. Muchas gracias.
No, y'all got that, right? Y'all got it? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. With that, I am going to step out of the way, but not before introducing Dr. Barbara Cooper, who is the Deputy State Superintendent for the Department of Education, who's going to start our presentation this evening, and she will introduce some of the other fine people that you see sitting here from the State Department staff. And with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Cooper.
Thank you, Dr. Sibley. Good evening and welcome to our community forum. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us this afternoon. Our students' education is the reason we are all here. We are fully committed to improving educational outcomes for every student in Montgomery Public Schools. I know personally the benefits of an excellent education. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. My parents advocated for me to receive a good education, and we are here to advocate for all students in Montgomery to receive a good education. Unfortunately, my high school education required me to travel 45 blocks from my home, taking 2 buses and an L train to arrive at school each day. During my daily ride to school, I passed through multiple gang territories, saw teenage parents, observed middle and high school dropouts, and personally saw the effects of students not being educated. It was at this time that I was determined to become a part of the solution and work to ensure that every student receives their human right to an education that allows them to achieve their American dream. I received the calling to come to Montgomery in December. I am honored to serve as the Chief Academic Officer for the Alabama State Department of Education, and I thank Mr. Sentence for this opportunity to reshape education in Alabama. As part of this work, I was named the Chief Administrative Officer for the Montgomery Public Schools intervention in February. Not a day goes by that we aren't discussing Montgomery Public Schools. Additionally, we have worked tirelessly to create a team to support our efforts. Again, throughout this intervention, our sole focus has been on and will continue to be on improving educational opportunities for students in Montgomery Public Schools. This intervention will require parents, community, school staff, and students. Parents, I encourage you to visit your students' schools as you are able. We recognize you as your child's first teacher. Ask your students daily what they learned today. If they're anything like my 2 adult children, one will say nothing and the other will give you a rundown of the entire day. Encourage your children to talk about their school day. This holds them accountable and us accountable for their learning. I look forward to working with you to ensure every student in Montgomery Public Schools receives the very best education possible. I will advocate for your children as I have my own. This evening, we will provide information about the intervention. We will share next steps with you for the intervention, although not all steps are in place at this time. We will provide an opportunity, as Dr. Sibley shared, for you to ask questions and receive answers to some of those questions. We do not have all of the answers to your questions, but we will work with your school leaders to create plans that address the unique strengths and challenges of your schools. I'd like to stress that piece. We could walk in here with a complete, wonderful plan tonight that has nothing to do with your individual schools. We are very interested in getting into the schools, conducting instructional reviews that will allow us to understand the unique strengths and challenges of every school, and then create a plan to respond to those challenges and strengths. We will also provide you an FAQ document, and some of you probably received this as you were walking in this evening. If you didn't receive one, we'll make sure you have a copy. This is a working document. We will continue to add to this FAQ document as questions are asked that have not already been answered, and have it live on a website where you can continue to engage us after each of these community meetings. At this time, I'd like to share with you a little bit of the background and the reasons for our intervention. As you know, the Alabama State Department of Education has the authority under state statute to intervene in schools for the following purposes: implementing a comprehensive intervention in low-performing schools and building capacity to sustain improvement. We will continue to have conversations about how we're building capacity in order to sustain the improvements that will be put in place in all of our schools. We will have those conversations in an ongoing matter throughout the intervention. The purpose of the intervention is to address some key areas that have been identified in the letter that was provided to the Montgomery Public Schools on February 9th. We will be addressing curriculum. We've already started conversations with principals where we're talking about the curricular concerns, places that we need to strengthen the curriculum, and how can we have that consistency across all of the schools. We've also started having conversations about leadership. We recognize that the principal is the key to school improvement, and therefore we're wanting to make sure the principals have the support they need in order to be successful and to lead the intervention efforts. We're also having conversations about human resources and personnel that absolutely have to be in place in order for students to be successful. We know that there are some places where we have challenges. For instance, having math teachers that are all certified is one area of challenge that we've already identified. We will continue to work through all of these areas as we ensure that students are taught by a highly qualified educator. Our show cause letter also outlined areas in finance and operations, student support, and community engagement. All of these are key areas and part of the intervention plan purpose. As part of the intervention plan process, the state appointed me as the Chief Administrative Officer. We've also appointed a Chief Executive Officer. This person will have the authority to address all of these areas identified, including some of the ones I've already addressed, but budget, school programs, act within the authority provided by the state superintendent, assist us with personnel decisions and recommendations, determine what professional development opportunities are necessary in order for all staff to be fully able and capable of teaching high-quality lessons in our classrooms. They might also have conversations around extending the school day or the school year in order to ensure that students have adequate time to either accelerate or remediate as needed. We've also appointed a Chief Financial and Operations Officer. This person will support us with the financial and operational aspects of the district. Both the CEO and the CFOO will provide ongoing updates to the state superintendent or the designees to have conversations about how we're progressing with the intervention. We will know as we're going along with the intervention how we're progressing, because we will have matrices and benchmarks that allow us to gauge performance along the way. At this time, I would like to introduce our State Superintendent of Education, Mr. Michael Sentence. Mr. Sentence has been with the Alabama State Department of Education since August. He comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and successful experience leading successful initiatives in Massachusetts. He has been instrumental in ensuring we have the support and resources necessary to fully implement the Montgomery Public Schools intervention. He is committed to ensuring students in Montgomery receive an outstanding education. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Sentence.
Good evening. We don't need to see that. So we made the decision to intervene. Now, there's been a lot of questions and frankly, a fair amount of confusion about what we're trying to do. The intervention is to the Montgomery County School District. However, what we have determined to try to do is to do something that has not been done before. And that is something what we're trying to do is to be respectful to both the schools that are working and working well within Montgomery County, to be respectful of the democratic processes that elected a school board in Montgomery County, and to allow the superintendent to move forward within a configuration, a different configuration, to make sure that those schools are either progressing or continue to be successful. And so what we've done is talk about two zones, a bifurcated district, one which we would be focusing on the 27 schools that have been identified as particularly low performing, that have a series of chronically troubling records in academic achievement for students, and we're going to be focusing our resources and energies on those. At the same time, we're going to be supportive of all of the district, of the other 29 schools as well, through hopefully better financial controls, better management processes, and a better school environment for those schools through this process. For students, the students are still zoned to the same schools that they did before. The processes that have been established by the Montgomery County for admission to magnet schools remain unchanged. We are not becoming involved in any of that. What we're trying to do is to provide the organizational support and structure for the district to improve, while we are focused intensively on the 27 schools that need particularly academic assistance. What do I mean by the structural issues to the district? Well, you know, the fiscal procedures and budgeting and accounting of all of that are some areas that we need to improve. We need to make sure that the budgets are developed, that they're accurate, that they're filed with the State Department in a timely fashion, and that, you know, this is all done in a way that everybody can see that. We have some concerns with the child nutrition program and transportation as well. We hope over time that we'll be able to resolve some of that through the improvements of our accounting and budgeting process. We have profound challenges in some of these schools on student achievement. These are things that we've been looking at for a while. It's not merely just one set of data points, it's multiple sets of data points. We have obviously test scores that we all pay attention to and we are frankly challenged by. We want to make sure that the percentage of students who are college and career ready when they leave high school improves significantly in some of these high schools. We need to close the gap between those students who are leaving school demonstrating that they are college and career ready and the graduation rate. Right now, there is a gap between those two, and in a high functioning school, that gap would be eliminated. We need to make sure that the graduation rate continues to improve in the state and that it's honest and that we can all rely upon the data. And an important part of getting kids to completion and improving achievement is focusing on chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is, as defined by the U.S. Department of Education, missing 15 or more days of school in a school year, and we have a distressingly high percentage in some of these schools of such students. So we're going to be trying to focus on those issues of school culture and engagement. The system that we have, that we're trying to develop here for Montgomery County is frankly starting this week with the school review process. These are what we believe to be annual school reviews. This year, we're going to be using this not only as a process to diagnose the issues within the schools to a fairly granular level, but these are the reviews that will be setting the benchmarks for school performance as we go forward. This system will not only develop metrics for student performance, but also obviously for curriculum and instruction. Further, leadership and management of the school, school culture, the management and retention of personnel, the engagement of the community and how we're fostering that, and then back again to the larger issues of financial and operational management, because one of the things that we want to try to do over time is to have a system where schools have their own budgets and that these are defined by a weighted student average allocated to schools that would allow for students to get the resources that they need to meet the challenges that they bring to school. We will be conducting evaluations of each school on an annual basis so that we can track progress, and that these will develop these are formative assessments of the school progress that will develop into a summative report that I will be making back to the State Board of Education in a number of years. As I think that Dr. Cooper has mentioned, we are ably assisted here by two individuals that we've been able to recruit to this task. One is Dr. Jamal Wright that we recruited from Philadelphia, and he is heading up our Office of School Improvement and Turnaround. The Alabama State Department of Education historically has not had such an office. Normally we've been involved with regulatory and monitoring kinds of exercises, but in this case what we're trying to do is turn around and not simply be the cop, but actually be the people who help figure out what you're doing and how to get better at what you're doing in schools and school districts. We've also been able to recruit back to Montgomery County from the Mobile School District, Dr. Eggleston, and I think that he brings a lot to the leadership here of this effort, and he will be the CEO, reporting directly to Dr. Barbara Cooper. A lot of our work initially has been focused on effective instruction. I've had communications and discussions with the deans of the schools of education in almost from every college and university in the state, and I've talked to them about being partners here in our effort, both in terms of a laboratory for leadership and instruction, but also to assist us in some of the professional development challenges that we face in the district. We want to make sure that we never lose, as we move forward in this process, that the entire focus is on student outcomes, that we're here not to simply go through the motions and try to, talk about school change, but we actually affect school change to make sure that students are moving through the grades competently with the kind of knowledge and skills that they need so that they'll be successful in high school and ultimately in the workforce or in college. And that further, that we're going to be working on the core structure of the school district to make sure that it is functioning at a high, at a consistently high level, so that we're able to move the district forward in a faster and more efficient process. We have not set a time limit on this intervention. Unlike several of the other state interventions that have taken place, where the state has gone in, tried to clean up some things and then move out in a fairly quick fashion, we're here to try to make sure that we're setting up a pathway that will be successful and sustained for the future. That what we want is to change the school culture in each school to embrace the challenges that the children bring to their schools, and that we meet that and move on. And that it's not something that is going to be easy to do, but it's going to take a longer kind of effort. That is going to require something that will take, we think, about 5 years, and if we're successful, we will be able to move on. At the as I said, we were going to be doing these reports that will develop from a formative review of each school to a summative review, and then at that point we'll be making a recommendation to the State Board about continuing the intervention or entering into a different kind of relationship where we're simply monitoring the progress and moving forward with the school board returning to being the principal authority for the school district. So I'd like to turn it back now to Dr. Sibley for the next portion of the discussion.
All right, like we said earlier, our presentation was relatively brief. That was a very broad overview of the intervention process, but what we wanted to do more than anything else is hear from you all. We want to hear your questions, your concerns. Some of you may be educators or school administrators or parents or students for that matter. So microphones on both ends of the auditorium, and not everyone rush all up at one time. Now I know you have questions, but do make your way to the front to have any questions that you might have or that you might have jotted down over the last half an hour addressed. And we have, of course, 6:30 to 8:30 designated for this time frame, but it doesn't have to last that long. I might hear stomach growlings out there. We don't have to stay until 8:30, but we do want to make sure that we have an open and transparent process here by which we answer all of your questions. Are there questions that you guys want to ask? And if so, please come to the microphones on either side of the auditorium to ask your questions. Room full of people. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My question is in reference to the bifurcated system that was discussed in the pamphlet as well as what was online, and some of the schools that are currently going to continue to be under direct control of the board that's here in place now, and those that will be part of the intervention. And my question is, it seems that many of those schools that are going to continue to be controlled by our current board have significant parent participation and community ties and involvement, whereas many of those schools that are in the intervention process do not have that sort of assistance. And I was looking at the plan. You mentioned some community outreach, and I would just like to hear a little bit more about the specific community outreach that you have planned for those schools that are in the intervention process.
I'll start with your question concerning community outreach. As I shared, we're certainly going around and doing the 3 community forum meetings. However, we recognize that the real work has to happen in those individual schools. So part of our plan is that starting in the spring and throughout the summer and fall is to actually have individual meetings at the schools so that we can better understand the needs of the schools. Oftentimes with parental involvement or parental engagement, we're defining what that needs to be and what that needs to look like. In my experience, is the most effective community engagement, parental engagement, is to invite others in and find out what can they do. Not all parents can be at school in the middle of the day doing some of those things that some parents who don't work have time to do. Not all parents can be there in the evenings or on the weekends to do some of those things we need support with. So our goal as part of this entire intervention effort, and as will be led by the State Department, is to actually go into each of the schools and have those conversations both with the principal, with parents, with community about how we work together to engage everyone around these efforts. Sure, you can have. Is that Kenny, Dr. Sibley?
Quick follow-up question.
Crowd is thick here. The questions are thick. Yeah, you're fine. I'm kidding. You're good.
My follow-up question to that is, when I look in the crowd and many schools that I've been in, elementary schools, some of them magnet, some of them not magnet, and we just had a simple event, it would be overflowing with parents. And here we're talking about an intervention, and the majority of the people in the crowd are educators or people from either the state or local department of education. So my concern is not that there be more things going on that we can talk to at the individual schools. I guess my question is, do you have plans to actually take some of this information into those individual communities that'll never come to a meeting like this?
Well, I think all principals should definitely have plans for that, and I know that some of your principals do go out into the community, and that's something that we will be encouraging as part of our outreach efforts. Again, in experiences that I've had, we've actually gone into the communities before school even starts, knock on doors, because the most powerful indicators and the most powerful ways to be able to support students is to see where they're coming from each day, to go and knock on those doors and see what our students' existence is so that we understand why a student might not have done their homework last night, but what can we do to take away some of those barriers that are created by not doing the homework. Some kids don't even have lights at night, so they can't do the homework, but that doesn't give us the right as educators to not be able to address it the next day in school. Sometimes we have to have some other opportunities for that to happen. Certainly we can't force parents in, but yes, part of our engagement process is actually going out into the communities and determining ways that we can support. Sometimes you take the community meeting to the apartment complex where the students actually live each day and where parents will come, in the afternoons to have those conversations. We've had report card pickup in community offices and community facilities in order to engage. So I think just as part of this intervention effort, we all have to be looking for ways to be creative. We're looking to our principals to help us with that. We've already started meetings with them, and they're giving us feedback about what works in their community and what support they need to continue to be able to engage those in their community. Is that answer?
I have a question over here.
Other questions?
His question was actually very similar to mine, so now that I know kind of where you're going on the parents' end, because I'm a parent, and I'm a parent at a school where there is very little parental involvement, so the things that you've just said sound encouraging to me, and I hope that they can be implemented and that they'll work. But on the other end, I would like to know how worried we should be for our teachers. Like, do we need to worry that someone's going to lose their job or that they're going to be moved to another school? When will we find some of this stuff out? Because I'm at my school almost every day, and I've seen some remarkable shifts that have happened in just 1 year of changes being made, just people being rearranged and stuff. And I would hate to see any of the teachers at my school who worked so hard to bring test scores up, to work on getting student attendance up. I mean, just the general well-being of our school. So how worried do I need to be for my teachers?
We're not looking to stop any positive momentum. We are sitting with principals and having those conversations about personnel, not unlike anything that happens every year at this particular time, looking at those teachers that are probationary, those who are non-probationary, and having conversations about even the grade levels that teachers are currently teaching in and determining, is that still suitable for next school year? It's really about that ongoing conversation with the principal, with the personnel department as well, to determine how many units are being allocated for that school for next school year, and determining which teachers remain in those various positions.
Okay. And just to go back to the parental involvement, I'm a parent. I'm here tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to hear my questions. In the future, you said that there'll be more forums like this, hopefully, in the individual schools.
That is correct.
Okay. How much weight will what we ask and what we say actually have on this process?
Well, I think we look at each situation individually. So certainly as we're planning to go into individual schools, it's with the mindset that this is an open opportunity for us to have conversations about what that particular school needs. We're looking at data. So what is the data telling us about this particular school, and what some potential interventions might be successful at that school?
Okay. Well, I welcome you into our community, and I hope that some positive changes can be made, because test scores don't say everything.
Yes.
I have an A+ student who just finished 1/3 of the reading portion of the ACT because he had to sit quietly in a room for 65 minutes, and he was crushed. So there's lots of kids in our school that are like that, lots of A student kids who probably didn't do well on the test. And so I welcome you to come see what's really going on in our school.
Thank you.
My question is for the state superintendent. You said you've assembled this great staff together to come in and fix what's broken. How do we compare to Huntsville school system, and how do we compare to Mobile school system? And the reason I ask this question, when we first heard the possibility of the intervention, MPS lawyer told us there was only one reason that the state would have for taking over the system, and that was because we didn't have enough money in the bank on reserve. We got a report, the ministers' conference, that showed Mobile was 16 million short and Montgomery was 5 million short. And so the ministers' conference wanted to know, how did you make the decision to come to Montgomery, who's 5 million short, versus going to Mobile? And the final question I would have is, how did Carver scores compare then to now? And since we're not going to call any names, but since one of your new people was formerly at Carver, I wonder how the scores were then compared to the scores at Carver now.
Well, I don't know the answer to the latter. I don't know the answer to that, to the latter point. I do have confidence in the people that we've brought to the department. I do think that they bring both energy and ideas and experience that are going to be very useful here in this effort. The other thing on the other matter about why do we choose Montgomery County? Well, look, I'm not going to speak to what the lawyer said, but there were multiple reasons why we had cause to intervene in Montgomery County. But there are lots of districts in the state of Alabama that have challenges. There's no question about that. There is, however, only one state capital in Montgomery, in Alabama, and that's Montgomery. This is the capital district for the state of Alabama, and it's my belief that a capital district ought to be representative of all the possibilities that public education offers to its people in the state, and that it ought to be a high-quality example of what is possible. You have schools that do that, but we don't have all the schools doing that, and that's why we intervene, to try to provide that kind of opportunity and that kind of equity to all schools.
Okay, and still I'm thinking, how do we compare? Could you get us that information? Since you don't know it, you may just not know it tonight. How does Montgomery compare to Hartsville school system? Because the information that I have is that Hartsville is in the same shape Montgomery's in, so then we're bringing in Hartsville employees, and then if they couldn't fix Hartsville, then how are they going to be able to fix Montgomery? Thank you.
Michael.
Hi, my name's Kayla Rowling. My daughter goes to Morning View Elementary, which is not on your list, but that school feeds into Capitol Heights Middle School, which is on your list. And as a parent, I shared a lot of the same concerns of the other parent of how this is going to look in the schools on the ground with the teachers. So if you have an example of another system in the state where you have intervened, I'd appreciate hearing a little bit more detail, because I see a lot of structural plans here and a lot of power given to the CEO with the power to hire and fire, and you know, that I don't actually see how that position is accountable to the parents in the community in a way that a school board could be accountable. So that's a concern of mine. So I guess I have a lot of questions, but one is, what has an intervention looked like in another part of the state on the ground in the school with the students? What are we as parents supposed to expect? How is the CEO going to be accountable to people who have children in these schools? And then my last question is, are vouchers on the table in this in any way? Is this a plan like what happened in New Orleans after Katrina to radically change the public school system in Montgomery? Is there an agenda?
Let me try to answer several of those. I'll start with the last one. There's no voucher issue. We're not modeling ourselves on New Orleans. We're not modeling ourselves on the Tennessee Achievement District. We're not modeling ourselves on the Michigan Achievement District. We're doing something that we think excuse me. We're doing something here that we think is in the best interests of the students, using all the resources to try to drive the best public education system in this district. We're not. There's no other subtext or subterfuge going on. The state has had interventions in a handful of districts. Not sure whether they've used this precise authority in those other interventions, but it looked nothing like this kind of intervention. We're going in this in a much more serious way to try to make sure that the curriculum is right, that the teaching is done well and effectively, that they're fully prepared to teach in the schools, and that we have a successful endeavor. So I can't tell you that the intervention in Birmingham or the intervention in Selma was anything like this, because they weren't, and those aren't models for us. What we're doing here is unique, but we think that it's powerful, and we think that there's reasons for it to be successful. In terms of how you're going to be able to interact with us, well, we have, we do have people who will be on the ground in the schools. You do have the principals that you will still be able to talk to. You do have the teachers there. We will still be, having our people come out to the schools, so that if there are other issues that need to be addressed, we'll be able to do that. So I would suspect that you would see in many of your interactions with the school the same kind of responsiveness that you would expect.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. The question that I had is for students that are I guess you can say special needs students that receive IEPs or have case managers. What metrics will they be graded on? Will it be different, or will it be the same as, or will they be compared to other students? Will they be required to meet the same metrics, or will theirs be a little different? And if theirs are going to be different, like what is going to be done to improve where they are if they're not where they should be?
Okay, the student's educational program for a student with an IEP will be defined by the IEP, both in terms of their academic standard, what academic standards they're held to, and what the expectations for progress would be. So that would remain the same.
Okay.
Good evening. I actually have a couple of questions, or a few questions if we can ask more than one. Number one would be, how will you operate the budget? Will it be two separate systems operating on two separate budgets? How are we going to fund whatever we're talking about funding with improvement? Will vocational education be on the table, and will it be available for all students instead of having to pick and choose which school you're actually having to attend at the age of 12, 13 in order to be able to get accepted into these programs? Core curriculum, is that even being studied as far as in our school system? Because it would appear to me, since core curriculum has been in place, our numbers really, I mean, I'm having to double teach my child or my children lessons that I can't understand with a degree, because the way that they're being taught is up in the air to me. Also, how do you change a school culture without changing leadership in place? And we say that none of the teachers are actually going to be pretty much, and we understand, of course, you don't come in right away and say that we're going to move this one, that other one. But how do you change a culture without actually changing leadership from the top?
Well, you've asked several questions, so let me try to take some of them. And Barbara, if you've got any that you want to add to. There's only going to be one budget for the district, and we have, I think, some people here who are going to be pretty effective about developing a clear pathway on fiscal stability for the district. It's going to fund all the schools, the 53 schools, just as it does now. But we are going to have a division in the oversight. That doesn't affect the funding. So I don't see that as being a particular concern. In terms of CTE, I'm not precisely sure what the concern is, but our goal is to support great CTE programs in Montgomery County. You have, I think, a pretty, the impact facility has got some promise to it, and I think that there's some things that, could be augmented. We're looking at trying to bring in some programs to Montgomery County that would be unique to CTE in the state, but
I guess what my concern is, just like in our magnet program, at the age of 12, 13, 14 years old, in order to get in some of these programs, you got to make a decision so early for a child in order for him just to even have a different opportunity. Every kid is not actually college bound. We have a lot of kids that are excellent, but the way it's set up right now, you've got to apply and then hope and pray that you can get into a school that would actually possibly in 3 years hope that your kids a personality or gift will actually lead them in the school that you chose at 12 and 13. And then once you get in, you're kind of stuck in that you can go back to your traditional school or however you want to work it. Will that be looked upon as far as having all the opportunities afforded to every child?
Well, the goal is to provide equitable opportunity for all kids and to allow for, people to transfer, if in fact that their interests change as they grow and they develop. So there'll be that. You asked what else there was. Pardon me? Well, the curriculum is going to be evolving, I think, over time. One of the things that we want to try to make sure is that teachers are fully prepared to teach the curriculum that we're presenting. We know that in the state we have challenges in terms of math education, and that's certainly true within the school district here as well. So we're going to be focusing, I think, at first more on those issues to make sure that the teachers are fully prepared for these subjects. Okay.
I can add a bit more concerning, we've talked a little bit this evening about those instructional reviews. That's one of the pieces we will actually be looking at. Are students actually understanding the information as part of the curriculum that's being taught to them? What can we do to enhance those areas? So these days in the schools are opportunities for us to really get a good look at how well students are being taught, how well students are actually learning the information, and where do these gaps exist. In some of our conversations with the principals, curriculum is one of the issues that has come up. So we need to take a look at part of these assessments at the curriculum that we're providing across the system, and then begin to determine where are those gaps and what materials do we need to enhance what's already being done. Other questions? I think over here.
Yes, I have a few questions. One is, on the list of schools receiving state intervention, I see that there are schools on this list where the principals have come and gone. There does not seem to be a consistent leadership pattern there. And my question to the state would be, if you're changing leadership, the question is, how are you going to determine who is going to lead some of the schools on here that have had 3 principals in 3 years, for example, 3 different principals within 3 years. And when you look at the staffing at some of these schools, you see, and it doesn't take a long audit to do that, you can see that if you have 1 counselor for 300 students, and that counselor cannot see the students at that school, state intervention is going to do what? Is it going to provide more counselors for the school? Is it going to reduce the paperwork at the school? Another question is, are the teachers, are the leaders that are in the schools, in these particular schools, are they competent? Do they understand the psyche of the students that they are teaching? So when the state comes in, and if you have the same, you go by something that you found in a book, and one does not actually know what kind of student am I asking the teachers to teach, and what needs to happen in order to reach that type of student. I also see on here, on the list, that, well, actually I don't see. I was looking for perhaps a magnet school. Nope, there are no magnet schools on the list. Perhaps one needs to go to those schools and see what type of culture is there, already there, and bring something to the traditional schools. Nope, there are no magnet schools on this list. So the question is, are all the students who are not in magnet schools, is there something wrong with the intellect? Or is there something wrong with the teaching? Or is there something that can be improved in both of those areas, along with the parent, along with the community? And my question is, so does it take several months of study to find out, to figure out that you have a child here who is hungry when they come into school, they had a bad night at home, they came because they thought that they were going to find some kind of acceptance there, and instead someone beats them up. And then you get ready to go to the counselor, and the counselor say, I don't have time because I've got this paperwork to do. And then their parent is not coming to the school. So when we talk about what we're going to be doing with these failing schools, the other question is, where is the money? How much is it taking for the state to take over and provide additional people that are coming to the schools that don't know what kind of students they're coming to? I was in a school that was taken over a few years ago, and what they did was hired someone from Dothan to come and supervise the teachers there and provide some more paperwork, but I did not see other kinds of supportive funding being placed and poured into those schools to help. So please, could you answer a few of those questions?
You want me to take a stand? I think I'm going to start with the piece about the resources. You shared that students come to school with multiple issues, and certainly we recognize that. That's one of the things that we've certainly been having conversations with principals as well as teachers in our focus groups as well, to have those conversations that students need additional supports. That's one of the areas that we're actually taking a look at and starting to determine how can we get these additional supports in classrooms. We all recognize that our teachers did not necessarily learn how to deal with some of these extensive behaviors that walk into their classrooms every day. So number one, we're going to have to address that. A lot of this is going to be addressed through professional development. I'm not sure the extent to which the teachers and the principals have received specific professional development around being able to support their students with these issues that some of them are coming to school with, as well as some of the things that were mentioned on this side about the curriculum and what does good teaching look like. We're going into the schools for an opportunity with fresh eyes to take a look at what's actually happening, and you're absolutely right. I've been in hundreds of schools, and it doesn't take 5 days to be in a school to know where there are some gaps. So yes, we can go in there and get a pretty good understanding of the types of supports that need to be put in place, and then start developing plans to actually address those specific needs. But again, we do have to go into those schools. I do want to stress that part of the reviews that are going to be done in those schools, they're a little bit different than some of the other reviews that might have been done in some of our SIG schools or failing schools. These reviews have the principals side by side. It's an opportunity for the person who's doing the review to walk into classroom with principals and start getting an understanding of what principals know when it comes to good teaching and learning going on. So these are going to help us form an action plan for how we move forward with those schools and providing that support.
We have the community. The community is very much interested in helping and assisting our schools. I have a program that has been in the schools for 5 years. It's called Making of a Lady.
What was that?
But what the problem is, we're asking the state, with the state takeover of some of the schools, you have principals who are terrified and do not want to do anything but go in their office and check on the teachers, come out of the office, and their psyche, their orientation leaves a lot to be desired because of fear and other things. But thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the lady who just spoke asked the questions that most of his audience wanted to hear. My question is, it appears that, first of all, the state had no confidence in the local school board or did not give them the kind of support they needed to do what you're trying to do now. Secondly, the question is going to be, how do you effectively operate almost two school systems within one? You've got state's going to operate part of the system and the county board's going to operate the other part of the system. How do you mesh those two and be sure that all students are getting a fair chance? Thirdly, is there any federal money in these projects that you're doing? Are you using any federal money in this intervention project?
Well, nice to see you again, by the way.
Thank you.
we're operating this, I would respectfully disagree that we don't have faith in the local school board. I would not have delegated them responsibility for part of the district if I had no faith in the local school board. So, you know, I see this as a, you know, as a joint enterprise, as something that we're going to be doing together. The schools that they are working with are, frankly, you know, doing better academically. So the challenge is, how do we get the schools that we're working with to be performing at the same level as those schools, to be raised to a level of performance so that the opportunity is available to them to be successful as well. So I think that, you know, one of the things in this process that we hope to do is through the offering of professional development programs and a variety of other kinds of forms of assistance, that we can provide it in a way that not only benefits the schools that we're directly involved with, but also provide for some opportunities for teachers and principals in other schools, if they wish to participate, to be part of these kind of things. So, you know, we're mindful of challenges of equity within the district, and we're frankly here because we're trying to promote equity for all students.
Is Montgomery County the...
So, and you asked about federal funds. I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing, but all of these schools I'm pretty sure that all of these schools are Title I funds or Title I schools, so that there's already federal funds that are involved with these schools.
But not particular money with the special project that you're doing in the intervention?
Well, the Title I includes funds for professional development to enhance the schools, so it would be for that as well.
Okay, thank you.
My daughter actually attends one of the schools that will be affected by the intervention. And my question is, as a concerned parent, who is my point of contact if it's no longer the board? I've had issues that I've emailed, that I've called, that I've submitted through the protocol of the Code of Conduct that have yet to be answered by the board. I've witnessed extreme levels of unprofessionalism, leadership within the school. I've actually been avoided several times by my own principal. So who do I contact? Who is there as my backbone to represent as my advocate for myself or my child?
Well, again, we're not, we still believe in the same system that exists, and if you've run the course with the school, then I think Dr. Eggleston will be the first point in contact, you know, with our effort.
Also, depending on how things go with this new intervention, will there be alternatives for parents that may not have the private school option, or will there be some form of school of choice?
At the moment, that's not been part of our plan.
Will it be considered?
Well, we have to file an ESSA plan. We'll see what the U.S. Department of Education says back to us.
Okay, and you said in reference to my concerns that have already been submitted to the board that haven't been answered, who do I contact?
Well, again, right.
Eggleston?
Well, you can send it to Dr. Cooper for the time being, but we'll be talking to the superintendent to see what, you know, what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
I guess it's my turn. Good evening. I guess probably some of the biggest fear is public speaking. A lot of people got a lot of questions out here that ain't gonna come to this mic. But I kind of like her. Because, you know, a lot of parents want to always say, a lot of teachers want to say, it's the parents and the parents. Listen, it's hard out here. Folks working, you know, like you said, they ain't got time. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people, a lot of teachers want to say, it's the parents, it's the parents. A lot of people are working hard, and they're trying to do the best they can, and I mean, that's all they can do. Okay. I'm coming up here from a athletic NCAA point of view, where I was screwed at, where Montgomery public school system failed me. I ain't gonna call no name of no school, but that young man over there called a name, the reverend over there, where he was talking about the test scores and all that. My son got a 22 on the ACT and couldn't get a scholarship. A 22, but he graduated number 87 out of 297 students with a 1.8 GPA. So you telling me everybody behind him had less than a 1.8 GPA and they still graduated? That's crazy to me. But it cost me $25,000. I still tried to get my son on in school. I got him in there, but he was 6.5 hours away from home. I couldn't put my hands on him. He got down there and he got with the wrong crew. He's right back here today. And I'm terrified what's going to happen to this young man out here in the streets of Montgomery. But hopefully I'm praying I can get him back on track. But this is just the first part of this meeting. This is the first meeting. My name is Alton Calhoun. I'm going to be back every meeting and I'm going to tell you my story little by little, okay? So I ain't gonna say nothing else. Like I say, my name is Alton Calhoun, and I like you. Okay? You know, I always want to put it on the parent. You know, a lot of these parents are working hard at doing the best they can. But okay, I got a story, okay, that cost me $25,000. And I met Mr. Wright here in the Uber driving, didn't I? And I was talking to him, telling him about the situation. He said, and I was telling him about it, he said, I'm the guy coming here to help straighten this mess out. And I said, huh? I was Uber driving, one night, Mr. Wright. Okay, but like I'm through today. I'll see y'all at part 2, okay?
Good evening. I understand about school level decisions being made at the schools based on whether or not they're an intervention school or an MPS control school. My question is regarding those decisions that impact the entire district. The one that pops up in my mind is the school calendar or policy adoption, things that impact everybody. Who's the decision maker for those types of decisions?
We definitely recognize that this has to be a collaboration, and we've actually started weekly meetings with Mrs. Allen to discuss conversations like that. Like a couple weeks ago, we had to make weather-related decisions. Then we had to make decisions about whether or not students would be out on Good Friday. So clearly there are going to be some decisions that we're going to continue to have to collaborate, transportation decisions, but we're creating that structure, as Mr. Sinton spoke to earlier. There will be a complete structure that will outline and delineate who's responsible for what and make sure that we're having those conversations that ultimately impact both sides.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. What plans do you have concerning the discipline in the schools? And do you have any plan to support the parents that are having difficulty with their child's behavior?
I think I spoke a little bit to that regarding the types of services that we've heard from both the teachers that we met with as well as the principals regarding really needing support with discipline. So as we address that whole culture and climate piece, part of it is actually determining where are we lacking with the discipline, what types of supports are actually needed to ensure the teachers really are getting the support to teach their classrooms. You can't teach a class of students if 2 or 3 or 1 is tearing up the classroom. So we recognize that there are some specific things we're going to have to do to actually address those issues, and those are part of the conversations that we're going to have. I think I don't know that tonight I've really shared that part of the whole restructure process is really becoming more transparent as well. We will be in the schools. We will be having those conversations and taking the information that we get from those reviews to determine what next steps are in the schools. We're not going to get to what is allegedly the end of the intervention and say we've done everything that needed to be done. Every month we will be reviewing what's happening in these schools and getting feedback and putting additional supports in as necessary. I know you asked about discipline. What was the second part? Right, and that's part of the conversation. So as we start to try to address some of the issues, mental health is some of the issues that we're actually dealing with, or even discipline issues. I mean, we have students as young as pre-K that are really having some major issues. So we recognize that it does have to be age appropriate, but if you're the teacher teaching and a student is tearing up the classroom, it doesn't matter if it's pre-K or grade 12. So we need to make sure, and we'll have those conversations about what are the types of issues that schools are dealing with, really make sure that we have a process where principals have a next level and a place where they can turn when they're dealing with these types of situations. I don't know the extent to which that exists currently, but part of our plan is to build a structure so that we really know what to do when a teacher has done everything they can. They turn to the principal. When the principal has exhausted their resources, what additional resources do we have? We're beginning conversations. I shared this a little bit with the leadership earlier, but external resources. We know we have the Helping Montgomery Families Initiative. We have the DA. We have a lot of different initiatives that are already in place, but how do we strengthen those so they're truly supporting what we're trying to accomplish in Montgomery Public Schools is what we're after here. I think we're over here, and then we'll come back to you.
Good evening. I have a question, and then I have a couple of comments. My question is, what would be, once you have everything in place about the takeover, what would be your number one thing on the item, number one item on the agenda? What would you do first?
Well, definitely the number one item is making sure that students are achieving at high levels. So we're going to begin right away taking a look at student achievement. But before we even get to the area of addressing student achievement, we have to address the culture and climate issues in the building. So this young lady over here shared with us that there are some definite issues around discipline. So if that is the major issue that is identified as a result of us going in and doing reviews in these schools, that's where we will start. So I can tell you, of course, we all want students to achieve at high levels. However, there are some things that probably have been ingrained for a very long time that we have to start addressing first. So I would say culture and climate in our buildings is the first area before we can get to how do we now start improving student achievement.
Okay, because teachers have shoulder a lot of responsibility in the classroom. Yes, they have to teach, but there are so many other things that the teachers have to do. I don't see how we can rectify this problem if you don't go into schools. Starting with the state superintendent on down, go in the classroom and not stay 15 or 20 minutes, but go and stay no less than 3 days to a week. Stay all day long to see, because everything's not put in black and white. Everything's not written. I know we have the curriculum, and we, students who are out of control have to do office referrals. We have to do office referrals on them and all of that. But in order to see what's really going on in the schools, you're going to have to go in there and see what the problems are. You're going to have to go in the classroom. You have to be there at 7:15 in the morning. Take them to lunch. I'm serious. Go in the halls with them. See what happens. See how they're skipping class. They're not showing up. We're going to have to attack the problem. And we're going to have to go into schools first to see how all of that stuff works. Because we want to say teachers are not doing this and that. We've done it. We've done so many things to try to help the students. And Montgomery County has some great students, but some of them need help. And in order to do that, we got to start with the preliminaries, going into schools and staying a while to see what's going on.
Thank you.
Hello. Do you plan on addressing the overage students? Like, for example, if you have a 17, 18-year-old in the 9th grade class with a 14-year-old, that's difficult, as she was saying, for a teacher to teach those different levels, because now it's not about teaching, it's become a distraction, because now you got to discipline more than teach. And those, how do you reach those 17, 18-year-olds who have given up on themselves at that point? Is there going to be a program where you can not just
not just separate them, but help them, because they eventually drop out and then go on the streets and end up in jail. And it's predominantly African American community. So since we're talking about the community, I think that is very important to address.
You're absolutely right, and that is actually an issue that we've already started to address. We had a situation where a student was that age in a middle school, and we have some concerns with that, but we need to address it systemically. We all need to be on the same page about what happens. Sometimes students come from another country and they've never even been in school, but they're 17 years old. It's not appropriate to put that student in a middle school environment, but we have to have a way to address it at the high school. So we have to make sure that our high schools actually have a transition place where students can enter and be able to start getting their education. But that's something we have to take a look at systemically, and it's on our radar.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, those students who are over age, who repeated a grade, say 2-3 times, are they still considered in those scores that put the schools on the felon list?
Well, students who are actively enrolled continue to be a part of, those scores. So yes, again, we have to address it appropriately though, so that we're not keeping students that are severely over age in environments that are inappropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome here. I just want to ask a couple of questions. Number one, as a parent of someone who's in magnet and traditional, there's a big difference you see there. But I also have a student that's an IEP student. And so my question is this right here. When he went to middle school this year, they started out with a IEP teacher for that grade. But as soon as school started, they took her out and left that gap. So how are we going to address those issues of making sure that IEP students have sufficient enough support where they can actually get what they need?
And I guess I'm a little unclear about the situation where you said they took your child out of the...
They took, no, not the child, the teacher.
Oh, they took the teacher
Because I
out.
was told when they took her out, it was because there wasn't quite enough IEP students there to, I guess, have a reason to have her there, so they moved her somewhere else. But then my student, my son, is then left. And then what took place was then put into, he's a 6th grader, put into an 8th grade IEP class, which he's totally uncomfortable with, which then we addressed that, had him moved out, but then put into another class that basically just sits there and really doesn't do anything to address his IEP.
Well, first of all, our goal is to make sure that the IEP is being addressed. So that's probably an individual situation that you and I can have a conversation about, because our goal is to make sure, our goal and our responsibility is to make sure if a student is on an IEP that their goals are being met in the least restrictive environment.
And then a second question on substitute teachers coming in. What is the state going to do to make sure that the substitutes that come in are actually qualified substitutes? For example, my son came home one day, and I addressed this and hadn't happened since, but it didn't have to take place with the normal teacher. But he came home and said, "Hey, Dad, today the teacher dropped the F-bomb."
Wow.
And I'm thinking, I understand students may drop the F-bomb and say a lot of other things, but not teachers or substitutes. So what are those kind of things being addressed with? And let me say this on a closing note for teachers that may be here. I once was a product, I guess you could say I am a product, of the Montgomery public school system, who was kicked out, not allowed back in years ago. But I'll say Capitol Heights, but at Capitol Heights where I went to, there was one teacher who showed great care for me, even though all the other teachers didn't want to deal with me. But she showed great care, and for that teacher, I did straight A's for. And so what can we do to help those teachers realize by showing some care, some real love and concern for a student, that student may start excelling for you, and get that across the board.
And thank you for sharing. Certainly part of a plan is making sure that we are providing opportunities to work with educators around the importance of building relationships. And I'm probably preaching to the choir to the teachers that are in here, because they recognize that students won't work for you if they don't think that you really have their best interest at heart. So those are the types of things that we're looking for and the types of conversations we will be having with our principals and with our teachers, the importance of building those relationships and really knowing our students and where our students come from so that we can provide that support for them. In regard to the substitute teacher piece, that's a part of the culture and climate of our schools as well. When principals are really trained, they're going to make sure that they have a list of substitutes that they can possibly get to come to their buildings, and those substitutes are actually teaching when the teachers are not there. But we recognize that that's systemic. That's a bigger issue as well. I can't just say tomorrow we're going to have enough substitutes for every class or enough qualified substitutes, but that is something that we will be taking a look at. I also think substitutes need really good orientation. These are our expectations. You're to follow the same rules our teachers are following, and we're going to monitor and check on your classroom and see what's going on when you're in here. And if you're not doing the job, we might not have you back the next day or subsequent days.
And if I may also ask this, as a parent, teachers were told are to, put in grades, or we can go and check. But how do we address issues when the teachers don't do that, and then we're at home as a parent seeing, okay, my child doesn't have any input here, but yet I'm getting told he's not doing good.
Right.
So how do I then help my child if I don't know how he's doing? But when you contact the schools or try to get follow-up, some teachers follow up, some teachers just totally ignore you. And some will tell you, I just got so much on my plate, I can't do it. Well, then what do we need to do to address those kind of issues?
Yes, and again, those are the types of issues we want to address as part of making sure the parents are kept aware of what's going on with their students and actually having expectations for when grades need to be entered and then holding everyone accountable for that happening. That's important to us as well.
And one more thing, as a parent, I'm glad something is now being done, because I still got more behind me. It's coming up in the school system. And I want to believe the best for Montgomery Public School System. I want to see it succeed so my child succeeds.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, but I'm a mentor. I like to help children out. I'm a youth director at a church. And we do like to help children like with their tutoring and stuff and help studying. But sometimes they just don't have the equipment to be helped with. All right. I would love to see these children get a book in their hands. We got an algebra teacher at church that can't help some of these kids because she looks at their notes and she can't follow even what they're writing in their notes. So if we could have something where we could help these children study, that would help them. But it's just like everybody says that the kids in lower performance schools, they don't have it. They do have it. They just need the equipment to get in there to succeed. The second thing I have is I listen to talk shows a lot, and I've heard somebody on a talk show say, I respectfully disagree. We are one school district. We are a divided school district. You have your magnet schools, and you have your public schools, okay? I've heard on the radio, I've heard on talk shows from prominent people that our magnet schools should be the best buildings because the kids perform well. I disagree. I think all of our kids should be in good buildings where they perform well. I know one of our magnet schools, they're getting ready to go into their third building. We spent millions on all three buildings. This building here has been here since 1955, but I feel like, and the children feel like, they're not going to do nothing here because it's an underperforming school. And there's nothing more depressing than look at a child with a lost look in their eyes. Thank you.
First, thank you for your work with the kids, and you're absolutely right. Equity. Thank you for the work that you do with the kids. Secondly, equity demands that all kids have great school facilities for them, that the internet is working, that the resources are there in the school so that they have the opportunity to do well in school. So, you know, we'll be working to try to address that.
What about
The school books, we'll see what we can do about that.
Good evening. My son attends one of the schools that's on the list, and he's passing his classes. He's not a discipline problem. He does play sports. And will extracurricular activities or sports continue in the schools?
Yes, we have no interest in you know, changing any of the extracurricular, co-curricular activities that schools are engaged in.
Thank you.
I am not a recent parent in this school system, but I'm a retired school teacher from another system of 27 years. This is my home. Montgomery County is my home. So for the last 18 years since I've been retired, I have observed Montgomery County Public Schools. I have actually been saddened, but I do have some suggestions. You're going to have to stabilize the school. You cannot have personnel going from one school to another every year. A home divided will not stand. You have to stabilize your school. You need to get people committed, not to a contract of salary, but a contract of excellence. They need to, at least, my suggestion would be, if you can finish 4 years and get a tenure, every principal, every teacher should at least submit themselves to 4 years so they can learn that school, that community, work, shop, eat, sleep, drive, whatever, in that community. It worked 27 years in my county. There was no problems on the news about the county that I taught 27 years. The principal was there for almost 20. The superintendent was there for almost 40. And we knew everybody. This is now, if I name the system, it's a big system. But we knew everybody. We was comfortable. I worked in another county, left my daughter in Montgomery County, but she was in a school where she knew every teacher from K through 6. I knew those teachers was going to protect her because I knew the community. My suggestion is this: we need to stop floating teachers and principals like they are nomads. We're not gypsy. We're professional people. Go back to professionalism. Love the community. Get away from this person. I like you better than this one. I like you better than this one. Get away from that. Get away from the black and white issue. We are a one community. Get back to the excellency. That's what it's all about. And that's my suggestion. If we can commit principals, stay here 4 years. All of you teachers that's been here 10 years, stay 4 more years. Let's grow together. You cannot grow if you scatter. That is my suggestion. I'm hoping to see that, okay?
Thank you.
Good evening. I am speaking as a parent of MPS and also as a teacher. One of my biggest concerns is curriculum. Our kids come in and we don't have books for them. We're told to pull things off the internet to try to help them. Me personally, I spend hours of my personal time trying to be the best teacher that I can be, and I know of others who do as well. One of the disappointing things that I see is that we're not engaging our students to see themselves beyond Montgomery. We don't do writing competitions. We don't have science fairs. We don't create in our students the vision to see themselves as doctors, lawyers, scientists. All we do is sit down and say, make sure you know this standard for this test. And I think if we continue on that path, we're going to get a lot of what we're getting because our students don't see themselves beyond just coming in a building for a pencil, paper, and a test. I want to know, how is the curriculum going to change? Are we going to properly give teachers resources
that they need. For those of us, I know that people say that we don't do, but as a teacher that walks into a building at 6:30 in the morning and leaves sometimes at 5:30, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night to be the type of teacher that I need to be for us, what are we going to get that's going to help us properly prepare so that our students can begin to see themselves? What courses like journalism and things are going to be offered so that our students can see themselves as our next doctors, our next school superintendents? Because right now they don't see themselves, and we can't properly equip them so that they can see themselves as our next generation of doctors, lawyers, astrologists, and things. So that's my question.
Thank you for sharing. Certainly part of this work is taking a look at curriculum, and I might have shared some of that tonight. We will definitely be doing an in-depth review of the curriculum that's currently being offered. Earlier, someone shared that we have a lot of mobility and transiency in Montgomery Public Schools. If that's the case, it's even more critical that we have some type of curriculum that's consistent. So we'll do a complete review of that curriculum. As part of these reviews, that's actually one of the items, to find out what materials are currently being used and what are the gaps. Teachers should not have to find their resources on the internet. There should be some common core, and I don't mean common core in the sense of common core. There should be a common curriculum within Montgomery Public Schools so that teachers have that information and have that as a foundation for then building lessons. Of course, we want you to extend that curriculum and go and get other resources and talk with other teachers about resources, but your core curriculum should come from something that we have that's consistent throughout the district. So that's point well taken. Thank you.
Hi. I would like to know if you have a plan or a program for continuing education for adults, say for instance the substitute teachers that can teach but don't have the certification to teach the program, the curriculums that they have. Do you have any type of resources that you can contribute to the substitute teachers, the paras, or any of the other teams that are in the school system to help further their education in order to operate as a team or a family within the school system?
Those are conversations we can have. We have Dr. Jane Meyer from the State Department that's over certification. Wave your hand, Dr. Meyer. And certainly those are conversations that we can have. I know that Montgomery Public Schools currently have some things around continuing education, but we can get more specific about some of the things that you've just shared. We haven't gone to that level of detail around continuing education for substitutes, but some of the most powerful models are grow your own. If people are here and want to be here, how do we empower our own community and our own people who come in our schools each day and choose to be there? So we're certainly all about looking for ways that we can strengthen those opportunities.
And that's good, because I know from a substitute standpoint, because I was a strong sub before I got hired on permanently. We're talking about dealing with other little humans and teenagers. Some of the substitutes are scared straight when they come into the classrooms because they have no idea what they're up against. And once they're in that school, in that classroom, and hey, we got teenagers that attack the substitutes. We got teenagers that attack the teachers. We have teenagers that attack the principals. So I do understand that you have an intervention in plan, but could you please keep the substitute teachers, the paraprofessionals, and all the other people that work within the school system in mind for that intervention as well?
Yes, definitely. We'll make sure that that's part of the conversation. Thank you for sharing.
I wanted to tell the parent that spoke about the science fair, I have a question at the end, though, concerning a conversation that a parent had earlier. Montgomery County did have science fairs, social studies fairs. We had our state fair at the Civic Centers, but that was in the 1990s. I directed the state fair and the district fair. the district fair was held at Jeff Davidson High School. So all of what you all are talking about, Montgomery County did at one time. But when we started going with this new thing like core curriculum, all these other inventive new programs that we jump on board for money, got away from the basics. I'm a retired teacher, 2005, stayed at Seth Johnson for 23 years. So all what you're talking about, they did. We had supervisors that came out and watched and monitored and helped and assist. Some of the same supervisors that were my supervisor are still working with the system today. So all you have to do is go back to that person coming in, monitoring the classroom. Teachers are willing to listen and work. Parents are extremely well bred and educated to understand and will work with you. Now this is a question I have. A parent asked, at one time in Montgomery Public School System, you list all 27 schools and there are 29 that are not on the list. The 27 schools that are on a failing list, at one time in Montgomery Public School System, a parent could go and get an application and take their child to another school that is not failing. Has that changed since I've been out of the system lately? If you're at a failing school like Seth Johnson, if the parents that like if I was still at Seth Johnson, if a parent says, Ms. Hooks, my child is at Seth Johnson, it's a failing school, can I take my child to one of those other 29 schools that are not failing? They could do that. Has that changed?
Was that under NCLB accountability provisions?
I have no idea what it was under, but I know they had the opportunity to take their child from a failing school to a school that is passing.
Yeah. Well, you could do it under. Pardon me?
Has that changed, Ms. Brown? Well, see, that is still an operating procedure, so have you all changed that?
No, we've not changed that.
So they can do that, right?
No, only if they're part of the AAA building.
Not, yeah.
Well, y'all need to meet on that.
No. Under prior federal law, you could do that, but there's nothing that if the district doesn't allow that for that now.
Ms. Brown, does the district allow that? No, I'm asking, she works with the board, though. She's a liaison between the board and the state. If she liaison between our school board, she can liaison between the state board. They're supposed to be working for the same thing.
She's talking about the AAA failing schools. They can go to.
But see, I'm saying you need to clarify that with the parents. That's all I'm saying, because the parent asked the question. That's a communication is the lock and key of everything. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you for asking your question. And yes, you are correct. If schools are on the AAA failing list schools, they can apply to go to another school. If there's space available, students can then go to those schools. However, if you're not on that failing schools list and you're part of our intervention schools, you cannot exercise that. I believe that's what you were asking. Okay.
Okay. Let me say first that we are not speaking to the elephant in the room. He's sitting here looking at us, thinking that we are afraid. But I want to understand one thing that I'm going to say is that all schools should be magnet. We have got to understand we are dealing with 3 school systems in Montgomery. We're dealing with the magnet program that's getting all the money. We're dealing with the traditional school, and we're dealing with special ed school. That's the elephant in the room. Money. Number 1. In the magnet school, you took those students from the traditional school. I have gone to the schools. Some of the schools don't have auditoriums. You're talking about books. They do not have books. You go into the school, they don't have chairs for the students to sit in. You go into the school, I stepped on the bleacher and it rolled across the room. Yet you have impact at all the other schools out there in Montgomery Mall where you're spending money. The school system needs money. This is the elephant in the room, so that you can treat the children in the traditional schools and special ed the same way you do the ones in the magnet program. We have so much success in the magnet program. Why don't you take some of those teachers out of there and put them in the traditional program? See how successful they will be there. Why don't you work with the counselors so that you have a counselor there for the children that are coming out of the 6th grade into middle school, and a counselor in senior high for the students coming out of middle grade into senior high, so that they will understand what is necessary for them to do when they enter these different levels. When they get into school and there's no counselor, because I found one child 19 years of age with 3 credits in one school. Of course, I had his parents take him out. But we have got to understand another thing. When you have the young teachers, putting them in the senior high school with the senior high boys and girls, instead of putting them with the elementary or middle school, and put your senior teachers in the senior high school, so that you don't have any accusation of sexual interest. Stop walking around the elephant. Remove him.
I just kind of want to go with what she said. It's more of an issue about finances. Our kids are a different generation. They need to be engaged. We need to teach them evolution. They're growing, and all we still want to do is teach them basic reading and writing. They're engaged in a different way, and teachers need to come up with better ways of teaching them to engage them while they're learning and make them want to learn. I too am a product of MPS system, and I grew up with teachers that cared, that wanted me to get it, that wanted me to enjoy it as I was learning it. And that's where we're failing our children. They don't want to hear a lecture when they go in school. They want to see something. They want to do something. You know, it's all about evolution. And we have got to get to the point where we want our kids to grow. We've got to put money in the schools. Let them have computers versus having books. If we're going to take the books, let them use computers. They'll stay in the school and every student can use them, but you need more than just a computer lab with 15 computers, and each child wants to get to the computer lab. They've got to be engaged, and we just got to change our way of teaching so that they want to learn.
My question is, why did you give a raise to the failing schools? And then the schools that are doing good, looking at the fact that they didn't get a raise. The real problem with Montgomery's school system is that we need resources. We need money. Nothing wrong with the system. And if you're not going to bring money, if you're taking the same money that we already got and using it, and you're not going to bring us any extra money, we're going to still be in trouble. Because if we don't have extra resources, the problem with the school system is they need some more money from somewhere. And if the state's not going to bring in any more money, we're going to still be in a failing system. We don't need analyzation. We already know what the problem is. We need more money. And if we don't get any more money for our system still is not going to work.
We're going to try to, we spend part of our days working, trying to figure out how to get more resources to Montgomery County. We go over federal funding opportunities. We go through all sorts of grant opportunities from private foundations to try to figure out whether we can cobble together a proposal featuring Montgomery County schools that would attract those funds to Montgomery County. We're trying to do everything that we can to try to bring more resources to the school district.
You misunderstand. It's not bringing more resources into here. The thing is, use the resources that we have equally among all the schools. And stop. Have you visited Impact in Montgomery Mall?
Yes, I have.
That tells you the story.
Okay.
My question is, I'm looking for specifics as far as what do you all plan to do in the takeover? You all are saying you're going into the schools, you're going to look at the individual schools. When you did your research and compared the schools that are passing versus the schools that are failing, what did you find is the cost? Because for you to implement a program that says this is the best course of action, what was that decision based on?
I believe it's part of the information Mr. Sinton shared during his presentation. He shared some of those specific indicators that were concerns in the 27 schools. We are looking at those individual data points to determine how we can improve graduation rate, how we can improve chronic absenteeism, how we can improve the college and career readiness of students. All of those will become a part of that comprehensive plan. However, as I shared at the beginning, we didn't walk in here tonight with a comprehensive plan for those 27 schools because we've not been in those 27 schools to really make sure that part of the comprehensiveness of that plan also addresses the individual schools. We have to get in those schools and create plans and interventions that's going to actually support those individual schools.
Okay, in your pamphlet, it says you found deficiencies in finances, transportation, academics.
CNP.
So you did research those things.
Correct.
So compared to the schools that are passing, what is the difference that's being done?
Well, at this time, it's still gathering more data to actually determine a plan for those schools. So yes, we've looked at them, we've compared them to others, but now it's about getting down into those individual schools, determining what needs to happen in those schools, but also there's some systemic things that also need to occur in order for us to totally improve those 27 schools. So you're going to see as part of our plan some broad items that are going to address all 27 schools. You're also going to see some individual items for each one of those schools based on the information that we gain when we actually go into the schools. You're also going to see as part of that plan collaboration that's actually going to happen with the other 29 schools. There are some things that we will do in the intervention schools that will also benefit the other 29. I heard some individuals speak to magnet schools. Yes, we want to look at all of the policies and procedures in the entire Montgomery Public Schools because you can't just fix part of it and not address some of the other issues because ultimately it impacts all, and eventually the goal is to become one complete district again. So there are some things that are going to be happening as a part of this intervention that's going to also support the other 29 schools so that when we get it right, and we're going to get it right, we will then have a plan and a place where all students can go in all 56 of the schools and be successful.
Okay. And what time frame do we have where we can question the results of what you all have done?
I'm sorry.
What time frame do we have that we can see results of what you all are doing and the benefits of you all coming in? I know you said 5 years, or it may be extended, but in the next 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, should we see a change based on what you all have done?
As part of this intervention, we're going to be looking monthly at what we're actually putting in place and actually monitoring those interventions that are in place. We're not waiting for 5 years to be able to give feedback. That feedback will be ongoing. We've committed to the Montgomery Public Schools Board to meet with them several times a year where we're talking about what we're doing, they're talking about what they're doing, so that collaboration piece is happening, and we're knowing long before 5 years how we're actually doing and implementing those strategies.
Okay. I understand that on a broad base.
Okay.
Like I said, I work in higher education.
Sure.
And I have a child in MPS, and I also work in admissions. So to piggyback on some of the parents, to me, magnet schools are nothing more than public funding of private schools. They have better programs, better systems, better everything, but it's a public school. So
Yes.
I don't know who makes that determination of what they get versus a traditional school. But I know as far as higher education, whether you're going to LAMP or whether you're going to Lee, we're looking at GPA and test scores.
Correct.
So that's all that matters. So to not provide those traditional schools with the same resources and programs is a failure among the people that made that decision.
Yes, I hear your concern. Thank you.
Could I ask this question? Will we test the failing schools on the same failing test that, because the day you all took over in February, the federal government came and said that the test that our students had been tested on was flawed. We were teaching greatest our faithfulness and tested the children on blessed assurance. So are we going to still use the same flawed test to get the different results?
The question about the assessment system in the state, which is required by both state and federal law, is going to be a matter for the board to determine in the next few months. What we are committed to having an assessment system in the state, but what that is and how that would work and what that looks like is has yet to be determined.
That looks like the last question, if I'm not mistaken. I want to stress a point before we get out of here this evening, that every single question asked tonight is greatly important. This is not just a dog and pony show to have you guys come out. We are seriously interested in improving the educational outcome of students in this school system, and every single question is important, and we appreciate it. I want to clarify one thing, is particularly, I don't know if there's any media left, but the word failing school was mentioned. I just want a point of clarity. The State Department of Education has never identified a school as a failing school. There are schools who need intervention. There are schools who need more support. There are schools who need help. A failing school is a term that was determined by the legislature for the Alabama Accountability Act. It is not our calling, and is not the way that we define schools. We push back against that every opportunity I get. And I know it's frustrating because I read it in the paper and I hear it on television, and they call these 27 schools failing schools. That's not a school that's not a term that we use. It's not a term that we have determined. We know that there are schools that need support and help, and we're doing our level best to try to do that. Wanted to make that point of clarity, because that's not our term. It is right at 8:30. I thank you so much for coming out this late on a Monday night. Give yourselves a round of applause as you get out of here. Thank you so much.